for speaking at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting and detailing the accomplishments of the Trump administration.
When it was first announced that Mr. Pence would speak to SBC messengers, some spoke out, arguing that politicians should not be given that type of platform. Dr. Richard Land, former president of the SBC's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, says it's unfortunate that some were questioning whether the vice president should speak.
He is the 24-karat gold model of an evangelical Christian politician. He is a born-again believer. Really a wonderful man. I'm very grateful that he's vice president.
Christian apologist Dr. Alex McFarland is in agreement.
I thank God that we've been given a leader of his caliber and his stature in that position. And every Christian American should be grateful to God for our vice president and the stands that he takes.
During and after Mr. Pence's speech, Southern Baptists and others criticized on social media the touting of the Trump agenda. McFarland gives his opinion.
For the vice president to address these ministers and messengers, and yes, to talk about positions and policies and things that the administration is doing, that's absolutely appropriate.
While agreeing that the church is about preaching the gospel, McFarland also says it's about being culturally informed and culturally engaged. I'm Bill Bumpus in Dallas.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Terror attack foiled in Germany. Prosecutors say a Tunisian man made the deadly poison ricin and was plotting a biological weapon attack somewhere in Germany. Exposure to ricin causes organ failure and could kill a person within 48 hours. Investigators say he bought the ingredients online. Right now, there's no evidence he's connected to a terror organization.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Guess what? It's Friday Eve, otherwise known as Thursday. So it's time for us to have Stacy on the Right show and get into all of the news. We have so much going on. And I have to say, it's really kind of good news, kind of meh, you know, the DOJ and IG report and all that stuff that's going on today. I really wasn't expecting a bombshell. In fact, the lack of leakage over the past 3 weeks since others have had their hands on it was kind of indicative of us really knowing a lot of this beforehand. I said right here on this program about a year ago that there was probably one reason beyond the Clinton dynasty that prevented Hillary Clinton from experiencing the full ramifications of what she did, and that's that she emailed President Obama on that email server. He was aware that she was using an unsecure server, so much so that he actually had a dummy email account as well. That had like a code name, and he would email her from that, but he also emailed her from his primary account. And obviously, when he would get emails from her, he would see that she was emailing him from a not .gov address. And so at the first time that occurred, he could have said, I will receive no more communications from you until you secure your email. And if she refused to do so, then he could have, he could do anything. He could instruct the Department of Justice to do anything. She was a cabinet official. He could have let her go. Look at all of the people who've been fired by the Trump administration for whatever reason. It would have been easy for him to do that, but he had political favors to pay back, and the Clintons obviously don't go quietly into that good night. And at that point, she was still very powerful. And so, he basically covered her with his invisible shield of he can never be prosecuted for anything because he's the first black president. So that's the crux of it. There's a lot of emails that or text messages and communications between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page that indicate not just the seriousness of their relationship, but their surety in the fact that so many others in government, especially the FBI, agreed with him that Donald Trump should never be the president of the United States, whether he was elected or not. So that's another kind of nuance to it. There's already a lot of spin out there. I've heard some local news people here in St. Louis on the radio deeming the report unflattering, which is, come on, unflattering? We're not talking about a fashion show analysis or Page 6 gossip column. We're talking about an investigative report that really shows that James Comey doesn't have any room to wag his finger or look down on other people in government after being found to have been not exactly on the up and up when he was the director of the FBI. Today we have two guests. We have Angela Morabito, Senior Campaign Organizer for StandUnited.org, and we have Curtis Houck. He's the Managing Editor of Newsbusters. And we'll be talking to them, China, ZTE, what are we going to do about that company? We'll be talking to Angela about that. And with Curtis, we're going to discuss the fact that Samantha Bee's advertisers have actually not returned. If this were a conservative television show and the advertisers had left and flown the coop and not come back 3 weeks after the scandal, everybody on CNN and MSNBC would be, well, because we just won't tolerate this type of, when you go low, we go high. And they would have gotten all their slogans out and they would have beat their chests and put their safety pins on and said, this is what you get when your discourse is vulgar and disgusting. Well, her discourse actually was vulgar and disgusting. The advertisers have flown the coop and they're just not saying anything about it. Probably because they're like, oh, if we just keep quiet about it, no one will notice. And also maybe they'll come back. So let's listen to some audio about this memo. This memo, and to set it up, the memo that I'm talking about shows foreign actors gained access to Hillary Clinton's emails. Now, again, any other person in government, especially if they were in a Republican administration, but, generally speaking, anyone, like Anthony Weiner couldn't have gotten away with this. I don't think Huma Abedin could get away with it. But maybe she could because of her proximity to Hillary Clinton. If you had foreign actors gain access to your email account due to your own negligence, that would be something that you could be prosecuted for. We haven't seen Hillary be prosecuted for this, but we now know that this occurred. It's number 4.
The Inspector General's report puts Director Comey's leadership style under the microscope, with the Inspector General exploring whether Comey went beyond his authorities in July 2016 when he publicly discussed the Clinton email investigation and recommended against criminal charges at this event, a responsibility that fell to his boss, Attorney General Loretta Lynch. We are working to confirm independently a Bloomberg report within the last hour that the IG found Comey went beyond his authorities, damaging the FBI's reputation, and said Comey's decisions were not driven by political bias. Comey testified after he was fired in May 2017 that Lynch's Arizona tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton just days before Hillary Clinton's FBI interview for mishandling classified information was a game changer, in addition to other intelligence that implied Lynch would not let the email investigation go too far. When Fox News caught up with Lynch on Capitol Hill, she refused to answer questions about the email case and other allegations. The report reportedly rebukes Lynch as well for her handling of the federal criminal probe. This morning, the Attorney General said, based on the findings, there may be more firings justified.
So firings, but what about prosecutions for violating the Classified Records Act? So she goes on a little bit further in this next bit and finishes it up. It's a news piece from Fox News. It's number 5.
I think it'll be a lengthy report and a careful report. It will be released soon. And I think it will help us better fix any problems that we have and reassure the American people that some of the concerns that have been raised are not true. If anyone else shows up in this report to have done something that requires termination, we will do so.
The report began back in January 2017, and based on our reporting, it's more than 500 pages in length, and we expect it to be available to the public at some time later today, Sandra.
And Catherine, you've obtained a House memo in advance of the IG's testimony. What are we learning there?
Well, the memo was prepared, Sandra, by Chairman Goodlatte and Chairman Gowdy in advance of a joint public hearing next week, where the Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz will defend the findings. Fox News has obtained this May 2016 FBI email that is cited in the congressional memo. FBI agent Peter Strzok in the email tells senior FBI executives that it goes too far to say hostile actors gained access to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's private email account. But he continues, it is more accurate to say we know foreign actors obtained access to some of her emails, including at least one secret, so that's a high level of classification, via compromises of the private email accounts of some of her staffers. That's important to note for some context that when Comey made his public statement in July of 2016, he said it was perhaps likely that the emails were compromised, but no direct evidence had been found. That's why this email we have today appears so significant, Sandra.
So was Comey completely on the up and up? And so I admit to you, but before we get a little bit further into this, because I have some information here about that one text that really is going to become I think it's going to be the battering ram for this story. Besides the fact that the bad actors received access, they were able to gain access to Hillary Clinton's email server. Besides the fact that James Comey apparently wasn't honest about it and forthright, there's this issue of, we have James Comey. Let's just take him by himself. He's kind of been uplifted, not just through his own work on his Twitter feed and things like that, but people they treat him like he's this knight in shining armor, and all he has to do is say something and it's automatically true, and we don't need to double check. Well, now we come to find out we do. We do need to double check things that he says. He's not trustworthy. There's also the issue of, so they're talking about possibly people being fired. Yeah, people could get fired. But how far does it go? The possibility of people getting fired is not enough. Excuse me. When we're talking about this kind of wrongdoing, what's to say that it can't happen again? The Democrats will eventually be in power again. How do we prevent people from feeling like this is something they can get away with? Now, the text message. It's FBI agent Peter Strzok. He's texting Lisa Page. They have this relationship, and what they're doing is they're shocked, There's been this big speech that Donald Trump has given, and he is just lighting the world on fire, and people on the right are energized, and they're seeing what looks like a freight train bearing down on them, and that train is Donald Trump and a new direction for the Republican Party, because it's pretty clear now that while some of us may have been kind of too close to the situation to see it, liberals were able to ascertain that if Donald Trump took over the Republican Party as president, that he would make changes that would radically alter the direction, because he's a business person and he really isn't a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. He's given to all of the parties. He's hobnobbed with all of the officials from the parties. He's been to everyone's wedding. He was really about his bottom line, his balance sheets. Really interesting that he likes to talk about those. That's what he's really concerned with. So they could see it coming. This is August 2016. They're texting each other, and it's a text message to Lisa Page from Peter Strzok. And he says, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? So she texts back, no, he won't. We'll stop it. They're dating. They're also working for the FBI. And they're texting on these devices. It's like they haven't seen any, what was that, the TV show called The Good Wife? I don't know if you guys ever watched that, but in that television show, which is set in Chicago, but it intersects with Washington, D.C., and the husband is the governor, and then there's a sex scandal, and yada, yada, yada. Well, the wife is the star of the show, and she has NSA tap into her phones through, basically they obtain a warrant to get into her phone by reason of the fact that they're investigating her husband. When they listen in, they're supposed to listen to see if anything that she's talking about or anyone she's calling or anyone who's connected to her has anything to do with the investigation that they have the original warrant for. But instead, they get enthralled with her extramarital affair and some other things she has going on. So they keep listening. So this is on television. It's clear that we all know that not only do they store our metadata, they can store the actual content of the calls, which means the text messages are available as well. When you delete a text message, it doesn't go away. If, Jenny, radio host here in the Midwest, knows that, then how in the world is it that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page felt so comfortable within their positions and their text message, able to communicate with each other, that they were fine with texting each other this stuff? They must have been pretty sure that they could stop this. They must have felt more than pretty sure. They felt like they had the right people in the right places at the right time to do exactly what she said. No, he won't. We'll stop it. So Strzok was removed from special counsel Robert Mueller's team in August after the IG uncovered the text messages and has since left the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Strzok's comment is reminiscent of his cryptic discussion of implementing an insurance policy in the event that Trump won the election, which was exposed in a previous batch of text messages uncovered by the IG late last year. So while it remains unclear whether their partisan leanings affected their conduct during the time on Mueller's team, I would say, how does it remain unclear? And I'm sharing a bit of information with you from National Review. How is it unclear? It's clear that they were biased and operating in a partisan fashion. We can't even, there's no way you're sitting here listening to this, if you believe what is in the IG report, if you believe those text messages exist, that you can say, well, they weren't partisan. They were. They were actively working to subvert one candidate from coming into office. And once he was elected, they worked to try to make sure he couldn't be inaugurated. And, that's what they were doing. So the IG report says that these actions had no bearing on their behavior while investigating Clinton's use of the private email server. And to that, I say, I have some, murky looking property right back here at the back of our lot that I'd like to sell to you to build a house on. Yeah. If you're willing to believe that, then dishonest people are going to take advantage of you because you're a patsy. That's why. Which is why these reports, in the end, they don't have any results. No teeth. This is incredulous, in my opinion. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Angela Morabito and more. Stay right there.
One of my favorite things to do in Israel is take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We'll be taking our annual tour of Israel in March of 2019, but it's time to sign up. We have a lot of folks sign up early, and last year, in fact, we filled up several months in advance. So for all the information on this trip to Israel, a bucket list trip for most people, go to the website twholyland.com. That's twholyland.com, or for a free brochure, call us at 800-FAMILIES, 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and leave us your name and your phone number. We'll be flying direct from the States to Tel Aviv and then begin our tour in Jerusalem of Israel. We hope you can join us in 2019.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Years ago, when our infant daughter died, Karen and I were devastated. Many friends heard about our tragedy and ministered to us at this point of incredible need. But there was one man who bugged me, to be honest with you. This fellow said, "I have peace in my heart that this tragedy is not because you and Karen have sinned." I was offended by his attitude. He was arrogant and condescending, and it bothered me greatly. He seemed to think he had a corner on spiritual discernment. Not every tragedy, illness, or hardship is an indication of God's judgment. But some suffering and hardship is, in fact, God's instrument of judgment or discipline. Sometimes the only way God can get our attention is by allowing suffering and pain to visit us. In 2 Samuel chapter 21, David and the nation of Israel experienced an incredible famine. Listen to these words. Now there was a famine in the days of David for 3 years, year after year, and David sought the presence of the Lord, and the Lord said, "It is for Saul and his bloody house, because he put the Gibeonites to death." God told David clearly, yes, in fact, this famine is due to Saul's great sin. Now, David went on to make things right, but I want to make some observations for our benefit. Make past wrongs right before the Lord. Don't let things stay around. If you know there are wrong things you've done, make them right before the Lord. Look closely at yourself. What are your motivations? Are you living a pure life before the Lord? Take your sins to Christ and restore that communion with Him. Here's what I want you to remember today. Sin is serious business. We need to keep short accounts and thereby minimize the consequences of sin.
Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. StacyOnTheRight.com is the website. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. We have Angela Morabito, Senior Campaign Organizer for StandUnited.org, and frequent guest to the program. Angela, thank you for joining in today.
It's great to be talking with you, Stacy. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so I went on to StandUnited.org and saw that one of the pieces that you have right there on the homepage refers to the ZTE, China, trade war possibilities, negotiations, et cetera, et cetera. And ZTE is a huge issue. There's a fight going on Capitol Hill about it because the president has one direction that he'd like to take and the Hill would like to go in another way. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Exactly. So this petition actually came from one of our sponsors. People come to us all the time with different petition ideas. And this one is specifically about American manufacturing. Trump, in his dealings with China, kind of wants to extend the olive branch and say, we'll kind of make inroads to the American market. But I still have some concerns about that because if you look at what he has done, they are not exactly the best technological citizens. They are actually banned from military bases, and I believe as well from the Pentagon, because they do some pretty questionable stuff. So it is, do we want to be buying more phones made in China, and do we want to accept the risk that we could be spied on?
So what is the position that's being taken on your website, Stand United, where you gather people together for action? What is it that we as citizens, if you will, are supposed to want to see in the way of dealing with ZTE and their apparent malfeasance?
So everybody who's signing that petition is signing on to say, keep blocking ZTE. They are blocked from the American market for now. Trump has hinted that that may change, and people are signing on to say, no, we need to be not only just supporting American companies, but keeping ourselves safe from companies that work really closely with the Chinese government and could almost be considered an agent of the Chinese government.
So I think that on the one hand, it sounds like President Trump really understands the situation and wants to get the Chinese government to stop poaching our intellectual property, selling our products as their own, forcing our companies in order to do business in China to give up their intellectual property, et cetera. What is the difference here?
This one isn't specifically related to intellectual property. That is a fascinating topic, and of course, someone who creates something original should have the right to protect it, which China certainly has trampled on those rights in the past, and they continue to do that now. This is specifically about, do we want a device that's made by this shady company in our hands, in our pockets, in our purses every single day?
And so we're talking about a product that they make, phones, basically, that are unsecure.
Exactly, and that is not a flaw in these devices. That's exactly how they plan it, which is pretty frightening. Now, as far as foreign relations petitions go, most of our stuff, most of the issues people bring to Stand United are domestic. But we do have an interesting foreign one that just kind of got revived over the past day or two that says President Trump should get the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize for what he has been able to accomplish thus far with North Korea. Of course, plenty of people want to wait till we see more results. I fully and completely respect that. notice, and there are two Norwegian lawmakers who actually formally nominated Trump just within the past day.
So the Nobel Peace Prize nomination for President Trump, I saw that on Drudge last night. I actually think that it was awarded prematurely to President Obama, and I would prefer to see President Trump actually close the deal and complete it, which is something that he seems like in his private life as a business person, he really liked to take things all the way through to completion, and then he would have the ability to kind of brag on what was accomplished. I think this is kind of early, in my opinion, and I'm a supporter of the president, but I don't think enough has been done. Getting Kim Jong-un to meet, I think, was strictly a facility or an outgrowth of the fact that Donald Trump didn't deal with him the way every other president has before. He just treated him like someone he wanted to meet and be friends with, and that worked. But that's not the end goal for us. The end goal for us is obviously normalize relations, the denuclearization of the peninsula, and the end of the gulags and the torture and all of that stuff that goes on with the citizens of North Korea.
Absolutely. I mean, clearly, Kim Jong-un is a figurehead of an absolutely evil and despotic regime. That's why it gives me pause to see Trump saluting a North Korean general. That video I find deeply disturbing. But there he is, trying to get this deal done, and he's got a signature on paper from Kim Jong-un. Granted, this is not something that could become a win this year. Nominations for the Nobel really close every January. So the Nobel Committee has until 2019 to make their decision. It's already been closed for 2018. So no matter what, they'll be going in with some more information, which maybe Kim Jong-un denuclearizes, maybe he doesn't. But if he does, that nomination is there, and it could be, it could put Trump up for consideration for that award.
I understand the dates and all of that stuff, but I think it's a much better accomplishment for him to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for actually accomplishing the goal that he set out to in initiating the diplomatic relations. So what other issues are you guys covering over at Stand United besides ZTE and, of course, the wonder of the newfound relationship and kind of brohood of President Trump and Kim Jong-un?
Okay, brohood is a great word. I have not heard a more perfect description of what those two guys have. So that's pretty great. But we're also working on a number of different issues, including a video game company that's called Active Software that released a game that's called Active Shooter, and it's a first-person shooting game that you essentially play a school shooter. It's horrible. The Entertainment Software Association has denounced it. This is not the kind of entertainment that is healthy or normal for anyone, and with good reason. So we are petitioning Active Software to shut down the game, to stop distributing this thing that tries to make it fun for people to act out going into a school with a machine gun and gunning down a bunch of civilians, and also police. If you look at, I've seen screenshots of stills from within this game, and the way you get points is essentially by killing civilians and by killing police. It's all digital, but if someone has that fantasy of wanting to go into a school and committing mass murder, that game only fuels that. And it's incredibly disturbing. It's something every parent needs to be aware about. It's something every teacher needs to be aware of, because video games are such a presence in schools. So we're petitioning Active Software to shut that down. Be a good corporate citizen. Don't be spreading this horrible game.
Well, yeah, I think it's shocking that they have the game and that they're planning on releasing it, and that it's something that I understand free speech and all of that in the private sector, but there should be some things. We're talking about children here who are getting killed. It's pretty stunning that they would even do that. So at the website, standunited.org. Thank you so much for joining us today, Angela.
It's my pleasure, Stacey. Always so much fun to talk with you.
Awesome. We'll talk to you again soon. So we have just really, I want to get back to and complete our discussion about these text messages, which seem to be the central, blockbuster to this report. And that being said, it's not as stunning as we thought. But if you've been paying attention and if you've been listening to this program, then you're up to speed. There's a reason why we haven't been pounding this every day as a subject. It's just there's nothing new. Unless there's an indictment coming down for Hillary Clinton and anyone else who emailed on the unclassified devices, unless there's some kind of connection between the foreign entities accessing her email servers, hostile actors, and then something happening abroad, some of our operators who were undercover being unmasked, which we suspect occurred, someone being killed, something like that, unless there's a connection and a clear, bright line, dot to dot, that connects all of it together and paints a picture for us of you did this and hence these things happened and you broke these laws and therefore we're going to indict and prosecute, then, I mean, sure, it's interesting to read the text, but, what the bigger deal here to me is that the underlying and overarching reason we're even having any of these discussions, besides, of course, the leaks, is that the president is being investigated by Mueller for obstructing justice and colluding with the Russians. There was no collusion. We're clear about that. And this newest report, again, scratch a scandal, find a Democrat. We're talking about the Democrats being the ones on the hook here. And I'm over this idea that James Comey was a Republican. He's not the kind of Republican I would ever sit down with and discuss strategy. He wasn't then and he isn't now. I know he's since renounced, because he hates Donald Trump. But even before that, how much of a Republican could he have been seeing that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were emailing on classified information on unclassified servers, and he didn't feel the impetus as a citizen of this country and the head of the FBI, chief law enforcement official underneath the DOJ, to do anything about it? Being an honorable person is not strictly the purview of Republicans, so don't get it twisted. Please don't email me about how, I have to be neutral because there's no Democrats or Republicans in the Bible. I know that. I am aware. I've read it a few times. But there are things that are in the Bible, like telling the truth, that God formed us before he knew us. So abortion, that's verboten. Supporting the complete obliteration of traditional marriage for law in this country, that's not biblical. So if you go to the platform and you look at the platform and what it says, it's clear that one party is not dancing within the lines, not even close. But this really isn't about party affiliation. If you're serving as a career appointee heading up the FBI, you're nonpartisan. So what prevented him from discharging his duties in this way? What prevented him? He's now even come out and said, I'm not sure I was aware, which is the that's the prelude to a lie. I'm not sure I was aware that Huma Abedin was married to Anthony Weiner. Now, knowing that would definitely have an impact on how you viewed the things that Anthony Weiner was doing. To say that you didn't know gives you a little bit of wiggle room where you don't have to, oh, well, I didn't actually know it. I'm not sure that I knew. Well, how could we be sure? Because he kept memos on everything else. We could probably go back through his records and see if the records show that he knew that. Certainly many others in the FBI knew that the two of them were married. So there's a tweet from the president, of course. The president tweeted, now that I'm back from Singapore, where we had a great result with respect to North Korea, the thought process must sadly go back to the witch hunt, always remembering that there was no collusion and no obstruction of the fabricated no crime. That's what he tweeted. Now, what they have found in the IG report is that Comey deviated from standard procedure in handling of the matter. The IG report has a lot in it. There's a lot to digest, and I haven't had a chance to read through it completely. I've read a couple of summaries, but suffice it to say, I find it immensely dissatisfying that we continue to find more and more instances of people doing things that are wrong. And the response to that is, well, this is an unflattering report. The rule of law is something that our country is based upon. And if we don't have that, then, I mean, what does any of the rest of it mean? If the laws are respecter of persons and certain people can get away with things and other people can't, it really calls into question whether or not the Constitution applies to everyone, whether or not the law applies to everyone, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the door. You crack that door open, you're looking in at anarchy. It's like Pandora's box. You don't know what's going to come out of it. So when we get back from this break, we are going to be digging into a little bit of information from former DNI head James Clapper, who credits President Trump for breaking the North Korean stalemate, which is quite a bit of audio to listen to if you think about how much Clapper hates Donald Trump. It's been interesting to watch people slowly come around to the realization that I don't agree with the president saluting some military general. I'm not sure what was going on there. All I can chalk that up to is a lack of savvy with protocol. I don't agree with that, but there's no denying the fact that the president achieved a feat in at least opening diplomatic relations with this guy. And so a lot of people on the left are actually, giving reluctant slow claps, and I'll take it. At least there's an acknowledgement that something happened here. And then I have an article about how to significantly reduce school shootings right now by the time school starts in the fall. Now, some of the ideas in the article I've shared here on the show with you, they're not earth-shattering, but they're put together in such a way in this piece that it's perfect. It's a great column that this guy wrote. So we'll get into that as well before the end of the first hour of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Stay right there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
A married couple needs to focus on both partners' passions and needs. What's important to one partner might not be as important to the other.
For Tony, his passion is sports. For me, it's adoption. During Tony's career, we sacrificed, made adjustments, and moved around the country because that's what needed to happen. He was passionate about his job, and I loved supporting him.
And I enjoyed supporting Lauren in her passion for adoption. I share her passion, and God has blessed us with a wonderful family. I'm so proud of Lauren and the woman of God that she is.
Find out the needs and desires of your spouse, and then be an encourager to them.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Pastor Joseph Parker.
Obviously when things are going well, it's much easier to have an attitude of thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. But even when things are going difficult, it's important to know too, there's never a time it's inappropriate for us to thank and praise God. Now some may ask, well, what about when you're going through difficult times, when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death? We can have two different responses. We can worship or we can whine.
Tune in to the Hour of Intercession, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Slow down, moms. That sounds pretty counterintuitive, doesn't it? Haven't we all wished to work faster, smarter, and better? But that isn't what God has for us. We have been given life to enjoy abundantly, which means that we must prune our activities for our own sanity. As American culture moves at an ever-increasing speed, God calls moms to slow down and say no sometimes. Not only is there power in doing so, there is relief, because we must use our time wisely. We often feel the pressure to say yes because we don't want other parents to question our fitness. This fear leads to overscheduling and stress. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 13 says, "The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear." Pray about your family commitments and feel free to say no. God will bless you for it. I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
My observation, certainly when I was there, was the North Koreans were clearly stuck on their narrative and we were kind of stuck on ours. And emblematic of that were the talking points that I was assigned to recite to the North Koreans, first one of which was, you must denuclearize before we'll talk to you. Well, that was a non-starter. So President Trump, to his credit, has changed that narrative, I think. And in a dilemma like this, only the bigger partner, meaning the U.S., could do that. So that's a good thing, and we're in the diplomatic lane as opposed to where we were headed, say, 6 months ago or so. So that's a good thing.
Wow. So there's an acknowledgement that our president has done quite well as it pertains to just getting a different result than what has traditionally been the conversation. The conversation has traditionally been that they show up. The president of the United States says, first you denuclearize and then we talk. And until then, the sanctions will remain. And Kim Jong-un says, thanks for stopping by. And that's it. Now there's a different dynamic. So I'm happy about that. How could I not be? It's gratifying to hear James Clapper actually credit the president with having accomplished something. But I hold to what I shared with our first guest, Angela Morabito. I do not want to see any kind of tangible rewards until we see the tangible results that the president has laid out as his goals for the country. So there's that. So right now, I want to get into this story about significantly reducing school shootings right now, in preparation for the fall. Now, first things first, the author of this story, Roy A. Johnston, he even included graphs that he created himself to illustrate his points. Now, what's so important about that is that he did some research to support where he's going with this. So he's got he starts in January of 1979. Well, he actually goes back to 1966 when Charles Whitman killed 17 people and wounded 31 at the University of Texas. He says no one saw it coming except Whitman, who planned the attack out in his diary and etc. Then 10 years later, a janitor at Cal State Fullerton killed 2 and wounded 7. January of 1979, a 16-year-old girl killed 2 adults and wounded 9 elementary school children, firing from her home across the street. And 2 months prior, her father had refused to have her committed to a mental institution, ignoring the advice of a psychiatrist. Instead, he bought her a rifle for Christmas, for which he should have been prosecuted. I mean, come on. So in 1984, you have 2 elementary school children killed, 12 wounded while coming outside for recess. 5 years earlier, South LA police had arrested the perpetrator for making threats with a gun, for which he received a misdemeanor and probation, but no guns were confiscated. In 1986, 74 children were injured by a bomb in Wyoming, and in 1988 had 2 multi-casualty incidences. So he goes through and concludes with 80 mass casualty events from 1900 to 1989, with mental instability being the common thread. But then things begin to accelerate, and he has a chart for that. He calls the chart Extreme School Shootings 1990 to 2018. So since 1990, there have been 292 school shooting events, a gun fired at a school. 35 occurred at colleges or universities. There were 36 major of at least 3 or more victims shootings at elementary or secondary schools. Now, Mr. Johnson focuses on the 36 because all shooters but one were under the age of 21, average age 16. Suicides, revenge, gang, and drug-related shootings were screened out. Some studies use the criteria for a major event as 4 dead to make the problem look smaller, but he uses 3. Out of the 36 major events, 11 or 31% were extreme, having at least 10 victims. The primary weapons were handguns, 75%, and 61% of them were stolen from a parent or relative. Hate for a teacher or student was the only motive with a significant correlation across all events at 55%. All but one event was planned well in advance. So he goes on to summarize, there had been 292 shooting events at places of juvenile education since 1990, which is about 10 shootings per year, or one shooting for each month that school is in session. Now, stressing this is important because that lays out what we can expect for this coming school year. At least one shooting event per month that school is in session. Now, 11 of the 292 shootings were extreme, 36 were major with 3 or more victims. The perpetrators in the major events were known by family, teachers, and schoolmates to have emotional or mental problems. The weapons of choice were primarily handguns that were legally owned by family members, but the shooting frequency has accelerated greatly since the year 2010. So Roy Johnson says his objective in writing this report and doing all the research that came along with it is that he wants to lessen the incidence of mass school shootings and keep the Second Amendment intact. This should be the goal of every person who claims to care about school shootings, who claims to want to protect the lives of children. You should want both of those things. So in order of priority, he lists the following 4 items as what he feels are integral to achieving both of those aims: lessening the incident of school shootings and maintaining the intact Second Amendment. First of all, he says you have to restrict entry access to the school. You must add metal detectors. That's number 2. Costly, but why don't billionaires in our country fund this cause? They devote millions to Africa. Why not help America's children? Number 3, allow teachers proficient with handguns to carry them concealed. This provides a second line of defense inside the school. And number 4, publicize that schools have armed protection at multiple levels. Peace through strength action will be the strongest deterrent that is easy to implement. Longer-term actions are essential to solve the root causes of school gun violence, and these actions fall into a few categories. Now, I'm going to give you the categories, and you'll have a little bit more to discuss on this. And, of course, if you want to weigh in on this, I'd love to speak to you. 866-963-2037. The categories that he says warrant long-term action: mental illness. 97% of the perpetrators were known to have serious emotional and mental struggles. Create a local police hotline, a kind of see something, say something concept where you can call in people who you know they're going to do harm to someone. But red flag laws that are now under consideration do nothing about the real problem, which is emotionally and mentally disturbed students, and failing to define the dangerous warning signs creates a legal quagmire. The other thing that is a real problem here is that you have to actually do something when you get the call. How many times was the Parkland shooter called in, reported? How many times were the police notified? So, having a hotline doesn't mean anything if the people who are staffing it just don't do anything with the information that they're given. And then you have let doctors work with police. Allow doctors, psychiatrists, and teachers to proactively contact law enforcement when they have individuals that they believe present a danger to society. Again, you have to do something with the information. You have to intervene. Otherwise, the reporting mechanisms are for nothing. And then you have to allow patient intervention. According to Mr. Johnston, legislatures must pass laws allowing patient intervention, not grabbing the parents' guns, because they'll just go get guns from somewhere else. Today, we look the other way and leave the parents with a full burden. Some of the parents whose kids went on to shoot people actually asked for help. They asked the kid's psychotherapist, will you commit him? No, he hasn't hurt anybody yet. They call the police. What has he done? Nothing. We can come out and have a chat with him, but that doesn't mean we can do anything. He hasn't hurt anybody yet. Some of the parents who called these things in were actually murdered by their own children along with the other people. Think Klebold, the trench coat wearers. They killed their parents also. It's a tragedy that something bad is going to happen and there's nothing you can do. And then our government representatives who are worried about the rights of the very, very few from the safety of the many, but we still reelect them. So he also has a reference in here to a solution by Marianne Barnard JD, in her summary provided at mentalhealthpolicy.org, she bottom lines it by saying the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws should consider creating a need for treatment standard for juveniles only. Why wait until they're dangerous to diagnose and treat them? Now, Mr. Johnson does raise an issue that I have already written an op-ed that was published, that I think it was in the Washington Times. They took the piece. I don't agree with raising the legal age to own a gun, because if you're 18 and you can serve on active duty in the military, why would you not be able to own a gun at home? But he says he feels it would help because that would put the onus of gun access for minors back on the parents, but would not infringe on the Second Amendment, according to him. Now, the reason I'm sharing that with you is because in a conversation like this, we can't afford not to listen to everything that Mr. Johnson is proposing here after he's done all this research. The conversation has to be had. And I'm willing to talk about any measures if we could get the people on the other side of the aisle, the gun grabbers, to put down their fascination with the AR-15 for a second and discuss mental health and some of the other issues that really, they're bigger than the type of gun that's being used, then we actually could get some solutions. The reason we don't have anything that's being done, any tangible changes that are being made nationwide, is because all they want to do is ban guns. They don't care anything about hardening buildings. They don't care anything about standing up our mental health care apparatus to take care of the problems that are so obviously still out there. He also says that sensible gun law reform would hold the perpetrator's parents criminally liable if found to have had no lockable storage for their guns. I guess we have to talk about that. Finally, hold law enforcement accountable. As a nation, we must create serious consequences for incompetent law enforcement. Parkland is a case study in gross incompetence at all levels, with no one being held accountable. I got to say that even with the things in here that he has that I am hesitant to come on board with, or that I outright disagree with, this is the most well thought out approach to a problem that it's basically about to gear back up in just a few weeks. We're at the beginning of the summer. We're going to have a break throughout the summer, and then school will start. And then the bullying will start. The teachers looking the other way will start. The administrators ignoring the worst kids in the building and letting them continue to terrorize other students. And then it'll start to happen again. We already know what is in store for us when school goes back into session. So the question is, why would we allow that to happen again when we know there are some steps that we could take, and all we have to do is take them? We don't even need new laws to do a lot of these steps. Hardening of schools is a capital improvement issue. How much money do you have in your capital fund that you save for replacing boilers and replacing broken windows and things like that? New AC unit is needed, and that costs like $15,000. All school districts have a certain percentage of their operating budget that they store aside for those types of emergencies. Hardening a school doesn't cost as much as replacing a central air condenser for a building that's, 135,000 square feet. It just doesn't. So the onus is on us. And when I say us, I'm talking about you parents. I'm a parent too. To talk to the people who are in charge of your kid's school, whether they're at private school or parochial school, or if they're in public school, to talk to them. Your kid could be at a KIPP school. It doesn't matter where your kid is going to school. If they're in a school that's outside your home, are you talking to the people in charge there about what they're doing to harden the building and what they're doing to deny access to people who might want to come in and do something like this? What are they doing to catch kids who are being bullied, who are being mistreated at school? What are they doing to discipline the wrongdoers, the bullies themselves? What are they doing about parents who are understandably, their hands are tied, they've got nothing they can do to get their kid committed? What are school administrators doing to lean on local politicians to change rules that pertain to when the police can do something, when a child can be committed? These are laws. We have federalism in America, where Missouri could have our own laws about when a child, a person who is not emancipated and still lives at home and is under the control of their parents, who is mentally ill and threatening harm to someone else, when that person can be committed. This is a local legislature issue. If we wait for the federal government to move on it, the issue is fraught with political problems. People on the left only want to talk about AR-15s. People on the right are understandably entrenched in protecting the Second Amendment, which means the other problems that he listed in this article don't get addressed at all. That kind of intractability will result in more school shootings in the fall, more dead kids, and more of these ridiculous, the kids are becoming activists now. The kids are lecturing us about, they don't know anything. They barely just learned how to clean themselves, and they're up talking about what all they know. They don't know anything. They're still living with their parents. This is a problem that we can fix. And I love the idea that he has about billionaires in this country funding the improvements for school districts that don't have enough in their reserve fund, or they've just emptied it out because they've just put in air conditioning units and they don't have anything left in there. Remember We Are the World? Remember when the stars of Hollywood used to come together and raise millions of dollars on TV singing and doing telethons, and then they would take that money and give it to a cause? What greater cause is there than protecting kids at school? Banning AR-15s doesn't count. Sorry, libs. All right, that's hour one. When we get back, we'll have more for you here on Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Pentagon is expected to announce the cancellation of joint military exercises between the United States and South Korea. Lucas Tomlinson has the latest.
In the wake of President Trump's stunning call to halt what he called war games with South Korea, a senior administration official tells Fox the Pentagon is expected to release a statement saying the next joint military exercise in August has been suspended indefinitely. U.S. officials were caught off guard when the president called the annual exercises provocative. The American military has always called them defensive. But it's the spring exercises that normally get under Kim Jong-un's skin. Officials say if North Korea does not get rid of its nukes, those live-fire exercises will resume. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
Pennsylvania officials are beginning the recovery after a severe storm hit last night. Tanya J. Powers has more.
Wilkes-Barre Township officials are asking for emergency help from the federal government to recover from last night's severe weather that left buildings destroyed and power lines down. 6 people were hurt when the storm swept through. They are expected to be okay. Mayor Carl Curran says he's never seen anything like this.
We're fortunate it didn't happen an hour earlier because the mall and everything was still open. There could have been a lot of catastrophes.
National Weather Service investigators are working to determine if a tornado caused that damage. Neighboring cities have sent first responders to help, including personnel from 17 fire departments. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
The controversy over the removal of Paige Patterson at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary continues. Bill Bumpus reports.
Messengers at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting in Dallas debated a motion to remove the executive committee of the Fort Worth Seminary's Board of Trustees. The executive committee fired Patterson 1 week after the full board voted to move the 75-year-old leader from president to president emeritus. Southwestern Seminary trustee Wayne Dickard spoke in favor of the motion.
If we can be overruled by an executive committee, why serve?
Dickard said they gave Patterson their word.
I believe our word should mean something, or else we are shallow in integrity.
Bart Barber of the Seminary Board Executive Committee defended their actions against Patterson, who's faced allegations of mishandling domestic abuse cases. Barber accused Patterson of trying to remove a trustee and refusing to attend executive committee meetings when requested by the chairman. Patterson's lawyer was also accused of questioning the legal validity in the final full board meeting.
What is your seminary to do when the president emeritus is working to undermine the legitimacy and validity of the seminary's board of trustees?
The motion failed in a vote by messengers, but the controversy is not over, as another motion was referred to Southwestern Seminary requesting that the full board review and consider the actions of the executive committee regarding the Patterson situation. The board is required to report back next year to messengers about the actions they've taken. I'm Bill Bumpus in Dallas.
Finally, a new law in Louisiana delivers a double punch in the goal of reducing abortions.
The key to that is to inform expecting mothers of all the options, because abortion is not the best choice. Benjamin Clapper of Louisiana Right to Life tells AFN that's accomplished through recently passed legislation signed into law.
The Adoption Option Act is a very exciting first-in-the-nation piece of legislation that ensures that women considering abortion receive information about adoption and how they might consider placing their child for adoption rather than destroying their baby through abortion.
It provides concrete action steps that they can consider for adoption, explaining away some of the myths about the process, and it provides resources to consider it a life-giving option, not only for the baby, but for a family that is blessed with the child. The birth mother can also contact adoption agencies anonymously to inquire.
And they would be informed about those agencies in state websites and things like that. And so I believe the state of Louisiana supports both state-run and religious adoption agencies that are helping mothers place their children with families.
That helps give the baby life, and that's also one less abortion done in the state. I'm Charlie Butt.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Why couldn't you use rubber bullets? Why couldn't you, if in extremis you had to use live ammunition, why couldn't you shoot them in the legs? Why did you have to kill them to stop them scaling the fence?
Nobody intentionally went out to kill anyone. People died accidentally. And I can tell you that Hamas at a certain point said, not enough people are being killed. Push more. Let the Jews kill more. Their goal was to have as many casualties. Our goal was to minimize casualties and avoid fatalities. But there's only one thing that I would do. There's only one way that you can actually put this to the test. If you had a similar situation here, and you tried it, and I'll tell you what, if you are successful in finding non-lethal means to stop this, I would be the first one to use it, as I asked our technological people to try to develop this. This is a new tactic. It's a new form of warfare. It's trying to attack civilians who are hiding behind civilians, which is essentially what the Hamas is doing anyway. It's when they put their rockets inside schools and homes and they fire on our homes. This is a double war crime. So they continue it. It just photographs better. But the fact is that they're doing something unconscionable.
So I always find it interesting when people will say about someone who's attacking someone else, well, why didn't you just shoot him in the legs? Now, we've discussed here on the program many times before the use of force continuum that the police are trained with and what people are trained to do when they're attacked, when you're attacking someone who's been trained in defense. And the people who did, they were scaling the walls, and this was all during the announcement, the lead up to the announcement and then the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem. And the Hamas terrorists brought some civilians with them, as they're wont to do. They spread them out along the fence so that they could be the first people to get shot if there was any shooting. And then they started scaling the fence. and they wanted as many people killed as possible because that serves their cause. Now, a lot of, good, clear-thinking individuals don't understand this concept. They don't understand terrorism. They don't understand the mentality of Hamas, where they raise the children to be suicide bombers and, to do things that they know they might kill one Jewish person, but as long as they've killed one, when they die, they're promised to go on to martyrdom. We don't understand that. And in a way, it's great that we don't understand it because we're civilized and we would just never raise our own children to die. But that same inability to understand what they're doing really flies in the face of the reality of what the Jewish people, the Israelis, are dealing with over there. So when we listen to Prime Minister Netanyahu explain that it would be the most momentous accomplishment for Bibi Netanyahu to figure out a way not to have to use, lethal force to defend Israel. They would love that. They're so caring about the people that want to destroy them that they actually bring the Hamas terrorists to their hospitals and they patch them up. So it's not about them not wanting to preserve life. It's that they understand their enemy. And if when you're watching the situation, you can't wrap your mind around what the Israelis are dealing with, then it means it's just not a conversation for you. And so when I hear people stand up, you should have shot him in the legs. Really? Everyone knows, anyone who's ever shot a gun knows that shooting someone center mass there's a reason that you're taught to do that, because that's the place where you're going to have the most accuracy. Legs have been known to run back and forth and, move quickly and are harder to hit. And they don't disable your enemy. As long as the arms and the hands are still working, they can still injure you. So, it is what it is. When do we get people who are willing to acknowledge the true reality of the situation with Israel in the Middle East and everyone that surrounds them wanting to destroy them? So, yeah, guess what? One of the Mueller team's attorneys sent anti-Trump texts. An FBI attorney who worked on the special counsel's Russia investigation until earlier this year sent anti-Trump text messages to a colleague, including one exclaiming, "Viva la resistance." The attorney's comments are revealed in a Justice Department Inspector General's report that was released today. The lawyer is not identified, but he worked on the Hillary Clinton email investigation and was the FBI's lead attorney on the investigation into Russian election interference. He was assigned to special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation soon after it began in May of 2017 and left in late February of this year after some of his private messages were shared with the special counsel. The Inspector General's report focuses on instant messages that the attorney exchanged with a colleague about the Clinton and Russia probes. "I am numb," the attorney wrote on November 9th, 2016, the day after President Trump's election. "I'm so stressed out about what I could have done differently," the lawyer continued, apparently referring to the FBI's handling of the Clinton email probe. The messages show that he was distressed about the FBI's decision in October 2016 to reopen the investigation into her emails. The FBI lawyer also suggested that he should work to resist the Trump administration. One of the text messages said, "Is it making you rethink your commitment to the Trump administration?" No. Viva la resistance, the future Mueller attorney responded. During interviews with the office of the IG, the lawyer claimed that his personal political feelings or beliefs no way impacted his work on the Clinton or Russia investigations. Again, swampland at the back for sale, $10 million an acre. Bring it on, dupes and easily susceptible people. Do not believe this. The lawyer did acknowledge that the messages created a perception of anti-Trump bias. He told investigators that he could understand the perception issues that come from the exchange. The special counsel has been reached out to by the Daily Caller. They have not responded to the request for comment. Oh my. Remember, we've been told over and over again that this investigation into collusion by the Trump administration is staffed up by career appointees, and no matter what their political affiliations, they are consummate professionals, and they are investigators, and they are of the highest order, and they will investigate and do a fantastic job on behalf of Mueller and the United States of America. That's not what these text messages show, though, is it? Sorry. It doesn't look like these people are impartial to me. So the IG report also shows that one of the anti-Trump FBI agents showed a willingness to actually impact the election. This is Peter Strzok that they're talking about here. Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz reports that, we talked about him and Lisa Page talking about, no, we're going to stop it. We're going to stop it. The FBI sat on the Weiner emails. Remember that scandal when he'd been tweeting and doing direct messages back and forth with an underage girl as Carlos Danger on Twitter. And those emails, the direct messages and then emails and all that stuff were confiscated to prosecute Weiner for that. And when that happened, they discovered a treasure trove of, I think it was 300,000 emails that Huma Abedin had brought home from work and transferred from her work laptop to Anthony Weiner's personal laptop. So the NYPD had these classified emails in their possession because they had the laptop where the data was stored from the text messages and all the DMs from Twitter that were sent by Anthony Weiner. You guys remember this? This was, everybody's mouth was hanging open like, he did what? He sent pictures of himself to a 15-year-old girl on Twitter through DMs. And then they found what? They found emails. So when the NYPD handed the emails over to the FBI, they sat on them. They just didn't do anything with them. Horowitz's team of investigators did not identify a consistent or persuasive explanation for the FBI's failure to act for almost a month after learning of the potential Clinton investigation-related emails on the Weiner laptop. Now, the FBI has actually, according to the IG report, prioritized the Russia investigation over the Clinton emails on Weiner's computer, and the IG report says that is possibly due to, wait for it, political bias. Yeah. The FBI prioritized investigating the Trump campaign's ties to Russia over the discovered emails on Weiner's laptop, possibly due to political bias, according to the report. Anti-Trump agent Peter Strzok was intimately involved with that decision. Noting Strzok's willingness to use the FBI to stop Trump, the report said, "We did not have confidence that Strzok's decision to prioritize the Russia investigation over following up on the mid-year related investigative lead discovered on the Weiner laptop was free from bias." So the next thing they say in the report is that Comey acted like the rules didn't apply to him. The report portrays Comey as insubordinate and consistently acting with disregard for DOJ policies, which he is tasked to carry out as head of the FBI. So both in his decision to make the public announcement of the Clinton email investigation, his decision to notify Congress when the investigation was reopened, he engaged in ad hoc decision-making based on his personal views, even if it meant rejecting longstanding departmental policy or practice. Comey also used personal email for official government business in violation of DOJ policy, which I tweeted out in the wee hours of the morning this morning when I first saw it. Look, you know why he did that? Because he already knew that Hillary Clinton was getting away with it and Barack Obama was getting away with it and some others were getting away with it. And so, I mean, why shouldn't he participate in that? Why should he abide by the rules when people that he's investigating are not abiding by the rules and he knows they're not going to be punished for it? That's the slippery slope we're now basically free falling down. Because now there are allegations that Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump and maybe Jared Kushner have unsecured email accounts that they may or may not have sent some emails on, et cetera, et cetera. And my reaction to that is, I don't care. I don't care. Who cares? If it's not a problem for Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and now James Comey, why should we care if Don Jr. is doing it? Don Jr. doesn't even work in the White House. He goes there, but he doesn't work there. Jared and Ivanka hold positions, but they're not It's not like they're doing like a CIA type stuff. They're not head of any departments, right? They just like, they don't have any positions that even matter as it pertains to the highly classified information. They don't have access to it. Neither of them are Secretary of State like Hillary Clinton was. Oh, the burns. Somebody should get some aloe vera for that. So the FBI, in the report, it found that the FBI is also riddled with leaks. FBI employees receive benefits from journalists. In the report, it says we identified numerous FBI employees at all levels of the organization and with no official reason to be in contact with the media who were nevertheless in frequent contact with reporters. We have profound concerns about the volume and extent of unauthorized media contacts by FBI personnel that we have uncovered during our review. In addition, we identified instances where FBI employees were improperly received benefits from reporters, including tickets to sporting events, golfing outings, drinks and meals, admittance to non-public social events. The IG is actually going to file a separate report on those investigations once they're concluded. So more bombs will be dropping. And the FBI attorney who worked on the special counsel's Russia investigation until earlier this year sent numerous anti-Trump text messages to a colleague. Vive la resistance. So there we are. Hello. Hey, nice to meet you. FBI that's riddled with employees who didn't want to see Donald Trump become the president and who are now, some of them no longer, but were working on the investigation into whether or not the Trump campaign colluded, an investigation that was brought about by FBI Director James Comey seeking to appoint a special prosecutor to get the guy he didn't like who fired him, who gave information that is technically classified because it was work product when he was director of the FBI, to some Columbia Law School professor who then sent it over to a major media outlet. That's where we are right now. I mean, can you believe it? Can you really, are you sitting there thinking, this has got to be the Twilight Zone? Somebody turn this channel because this can't be exactly what's happening here. All right, we're going to be back right after these important messages and talk about a little bit of consumer spending and prices. So stay there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki Addison of Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. Family is so important to everything. I mean, think about it. Right after God created Adam, he made family by creating Eve as his wife.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference this summer. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family.
Our speakers include Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, and more.
We'll even be there.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference will be Friday and Saturday, August 17th and 18th at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi. Come help us fight back against the enemy's direct attack on marriage and family. That's the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference put on by Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said you would do greater works than he did. 3 places you got to go. That if you go to those places emotionally, not physically. They, Elijah and Elisha, went there physically. But you and I have to go there emotionally and spiritually. If we'll go emotionally and spiritually where they went physically, we'll come into the truths and the transforming and transferring of the mantle that happened with Elisha will happen with us in our generation. Number 1, they went to Gilgal. The name Gilgal means rolling away. It's a place where Israel was circumcised the first time in the promised land after 40 years of wilderness wandering. Young people were circumcised there, and they rolled away the shame of their 40 years of wandering. For every Christian leader that becomes great in the sight of the Lord, he has got to recognize that his weakness, his sin in times past, his origins, where he came up from, the limitations of his own natural abilities, all those things that may cause him shame because of natural identification have to be rolled away and paid no attention to in this hour of visitation where God will be glorified. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Amandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Well, if gas prices are eating away at your wallet this summer, you're not alone. AAA says Americans are spending $69 more each month to fill up their tank. Right now, the Chicago average is $3.26 a gallon at $2.99 for the rest of Illinois. Overall, it's a big chunk out of your budget. Analysts say Americans are now spending 7% of their income on gas. That's up 1.5 percentage points over last year. So if you make $45,000 a year, you're shelling out over $3,000 just to fuel up.
Well, well, well. Now, obviously, people who make more money don't necessarily drive more miles, but they might drive a car that has a larger tank. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some methodology to that, but yeah. Welcome back to the program. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right, here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Head over to urbanfamilytalk.com or American Family Radio's website, afr.net, and we would love to see you over there. Hit the subscribe buttons, you know, do some cool, there's polls over at Urban Family Talk. It's good for us to hear from you. We really appreciate you. So now, you hear that about and every summer the gas prices go up. It's not like we're, you know, ooh, oh my goodness, we've never seen this before. This happens every summer. But it's still interesting because not really much has changed in the way of the price per barrel. And Americans aren't doing any more driving. You know, obviously some people are going on vacation, but a lot of people are flying as well. So it's just interesting. But what's more interesting than that? Well, I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised to see this story. But here it is. Who's that selling steaks, raw steaks, off of a truck in the parking lot of the Costco? You might be wondering who that is. Well, it's Amazon. So I'm laughing because it's like there's nothing they won't do. Amazon is like that neighbor that's always doing a project and they're always doing it themselves. And you come over, you're like, what are you doing? We've ripped out our bathroom. Oh, is someone we're installing it ourselves. You're like, oh, and then they do it. Next thing you know, we're ripping up our driveway. You're doing it yourself? Yeah. And we're going to install a new one ourselves. We're going to pour the concrete ourselves. That's what Amazon is like, only it's a company. There's nothing they won't do. So this is a story about Donna Brunswick. She's just a regular lady. She drives to the Costco last month to pick up 2 pounds of raw flank steak, but she didn't go to Costco so she could pick it up from Costco. She went there to pick it up from a truck that was parked in the parking lot of the Costco. She says you wouldn't typically buy meat off of a random truck. She's a technical manager in Atlanta, but she said the $20 for the slab of beef was a really good deal. She liked the filet mignon she bought from there in December when it was that day's offering. She says after they cooked it, the truck meat was delicious. That's a quote from her. So the meat doesn't just fall off the back of any random truck. It's sold by Amazon, which already sells just about anything online. They now sell discounted seafood, panini presses, and more from what they call the treasure truck. Now I'm going to tell you, I did not know about the treasure truck until I saw this article. I have not been offered an opportunity to buy anything off of the treasure truck because I'm an Amazon user. So I'm waiting for them to send me my notification that there's a treasure truck nearby so I can see what's going on. Because you know me, if there's anything going on with Amazon selling something, I want to be able to experience it for myself and try it out. I've not been given the opportunity yet, but now I'm waiting. So it's a quirky way for them to connect with shoppers in person and expand their physical presence and promote themselves. They've also used the trucks to bring people into the Whole Foods. They don't need to do that with me. I was just there earlier today. The grocery chain they bought last year, they actually debuted this service, these treasure trucks, 2 years ago, and they now roam nearly 40 cities in the United States and in England. Now I'm going to wait till after the show, or maybe I'll check over the next break to see if our city is in the number of 40 that they're in. The inspiration, says treasure truck director Margot Johnson, was the ice cream truck, which is another store on wheels that pops up unexpectedly. Treasure truck sales are just a tiny piece of the online giant's retail business. The value to Amazon may be in the app downloads the trucks generate and their ability to test what products are hot sellers, and of course, the buzz that they can create. She says the same thing that I said. Amazon does a lot of these types of things because they can. So they basically, someone will have an idea in the company, and instead of them saying, no, we're not going to do that because that's logistically impossible, there is nothing that's logistically impossible for them. So they're like, sure, we'll do it. Just do it. Just make it, get a truck, suit it up. What are you going to sell out of it? Suit it up for refrigeration and freezing, and let's get some good custom logos on it and get an app going, and we'll do that. I just think it's pure capitalism is what it is. So there's a bunch more things you can buy on the trucks, not just meat. They have basically this process by which they keep the item a secret until the day that the trucks roll out. People who sign up get a morning text announcing the deal of the day. At the circus-like trucks, which light up and blast music, Amazon workers play games with shoppers and help them take selfies. They have custom designs like a lobster and a lighthouse on the Boston truck, cowboy boots on the Dallas truck, a race car on the Indy truck, and at all of the trucks, they usually have a bubble machine blowing. You guys, I have to experience this. It's so kitschy, says Evelyn Molina, who bought a $20 bouquet of roses, lilies, and other flowers at the Miami treasure truck. Molina, who blogs about parenthood at mommymafia.com, decided to treat herself since the truck was parked near her workout spot. The first treasure truck hit the streets in Seattle in 2016. They expanded to 25 cities last fall, then to a dozen British cities, including London and Manchester late last year. They will not share whether or not they plan to expand further than that. The trucks go out a couple of times a week and spend a few hours roving between the parking lots of malls, office complexes, or banks. Amazon rents the spaces, but they can also park in front of their own Whole Foods stores. Molina got a $5 Whole Foods coupon when she picked up a Star Wars toy in December from a truck that was parked nearby. The coupon had to be used that day, so she went into the Whole Foods and bought grapes, chicken tortilla soup, and other groceries. She says they totally got me. Amazon chooses what's sold on the trucks. There are holiday-related goods such as the Godiva chocolates, a dozen red roses they sold before Valentine's Day, and trendy items like the Instant Pot pressure cooker, which we have, or food such as uncooked shrimp or raw chicken wings, because all of the trucks have refrigeration. So, what do you guys think about that? What do you think about Amazon, in addition to owning Whole Foods, which apparently has been a really good thing for them? The business at Whole Foods has been booming, according to the numbers that they've been putting out about their same store sales. Say that fast 3 times. Over the course of the year that they've owned Whole Foods. There's also reporting out that the CEO of Whole Foods has been really jousting with Amazon about some of the changes that they've made, and he's taken a devil-may-care attitude about it because he feels like, he doesn't want to be fired, but he's not afraid of it, and so he's really working hard to make sure that he pushes back when he thinks they're implementing things that aren't good for the store. It's just an interesting time. I kind of appreciate it. I appreciate anything a retailer does to make their experience more fun. Not that adults have to have fun per se. We are adults, but it is nice to see them go the extra mile to try to get something more to you. And then, of course, in exchange for that, they want you to buy something. And the reason I say that is because I was recently, so yesterday I went to the regular grocery store, which for us is Schnucks. We have other grocery stores here, but Schnucks is the like regular people's grocery store that's owned by a local family. It's in other states now, but it started off here in Missouri, and Schnucks is their last name. And so you go to the Schnucks, and it's the grocery store. Think of your Kroger, but it's styled up like a Schnucks. And what they've done is they've put in the same thing that you have at Walmart and other stores, which is self-checkouts. Now, I don't know if you guys know about this, but I'm here to tell you I am not a fan of the self-checkout. And the reason is because, obviously, when I was a teenager, I worked in retail, and I also worked in checkout lanes. I actually was the person who checked people out and, rang stuff up for them. Now, I don't have bad experiences from that or bad memories from that, but what I do know is that employees are paid to ring up your items and bag them and hand them to you after you've paid. That payment to that employee is included in the cost of the goods that you buy. So when I go to the store and find all the items and load it into the basket and then have to go to the checkout lane and check myself out, I'm not getting what I'm paying for. I'm paying for you to have an employee to check out my stuff. If you make me do it, then I should get a discount. I feel like I should immediately get 5% off the total cost of my bill for checking my own stuff out and bagging it. Because I'm not at Shop and Save where I'm expected to bag my own stuff. I'm not at Costco or Sam's Club, we're Sam's Club people, where I have to, basically put my stuff into boxes because they just load it back into the basket for you. There is no bagging, but you know that because you're at Sam's Club and everything you're buying is so big, there really aren't any bags for it to fit in. But at the grocery store or the Walmart, the cost of a bagger checking my stuff out and actually bagging it for me, that's included. So if I do it myself, I want a discount. So if I'm not getting a discount, I'm not doing it myself. So this is what I noticed when I was at Schnucks yesterday. The self-checkout area has expanded. It was basically the equivalent of 2 or 3 lanes of a regular checkout lane. Now it is the equivalent of about 6 checkout lanes. So what they're saying to you, they're communicating to all the shoppers, you will be checking yourself out and bagging your own stuff for the same price that you would be paying if you were over there in one of those other lines. That's not for me. That is not for me. If I wanted to do extra work, well, that's what it amounts to, is going there and checking yourself out. It is easier for me to look on Amazon and find more things that I normally buy at the grocery store and have them delivered here to the house on automatic, so you have these little, they're called pantry boxes, and you order the products and they automatically send them to you once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months on whatever schedule you set up. So they're forcing me to find other places to buy this stuff because I don't want to be there at their store checking myself out. This is terrible for their business. I know I'm not the only one who has stumbled upon the truth, which is I don't like ringing my own stuff up, and I don't like bagging my own stuff at the grocery store or at Walmart. I don't like it. So I think they're making a mistake. They're not really thinking it through. They think they've stumbled upon a way to not have as many employees there. But what they're stumbling on is a way to make people who already shop there feel like they have to work to buy something, and therefore they would just shop somewhere else. Kind of sad. And again, meanwhile, Amazon's making so much money that they've now implemented the equivalent of an ice cream truck for adults to buy meat out of, with music and bubbles. Obviously, I'm waiting to experience it for myself. I have to get in on some of that action. I do. There's no way I'm not going to be finding out if we've got truck access here in St. Louis and getting in on some of it if we do. So there's also the president's birthday just passed by. He was celebrating with the booming economy, North Korea. Obviously he feels like that was a major success. I feel like it was a successful meeting. The whole saluting one of their military people notwithstanding. The World Cup a bunch of the games are going to be played in America. It's a huge feat for us. The Obama administration was not able to get them to play any of the games here the last time the city biddings went up. The jobless rate is at a 44-year low. Another huge accomplishment for the president and for his policies. the economy, according to JP Morgan, is growing at 4%, which is pretty stunning. And speaking of people who don't have, who may or may not be flouting their email access, I mentioned Ivanka Trump. It turns out that South Korea's foreign minister met with Ivanka in Washington to rekindle the Olympic friendship, and Rex Tillerson's deputy had to take his official meeting. And while he was in town, or while they were meeting, I should say, the South Korean foreign minister Kang Kyung-hwa met with Ivanka Trump multiple times. They even had lunch together. And that was when it kind of started. It kind of got the ball rolling, talking to them about their aspirations for a relationship, better relations with North Korea. All of that began in these lunches and meetings with the South Korean delegate, foreign minister, and Ivanka Trump. So the further we get into this, the more we learn about how this all came together. It's clear that it took months and months and months, and it was something that was orchestrated by the president and his cabinet. And it's great to see. It disproves the lie that he's unprepared. He doesn't think things through. I told y'all he could be the wildest tweeter in the planet, but the tweets are not official policy. And while you're reading tweets and you got flames shooting out of your ears and you're just like incensed and you can't believe he's tweeting this stuff, behind the scenes, he's doing the real work of governing, which is why I don't pay as close attention to his Twitter feed as I do to the news reports from trusted organizations that are reporting on what the administration is doing, and specifically the White House press pool. You do well to figure out a place where you can get information about what's going on in D.C. and read that and spend less time reading the online social media. Unless you just like the tweets. All right, when we get back, we're going to talk to Curtis Houck. He's the managing editor of Newsbusters. He'll be with us right after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony.
Welcome back. Thank you for being here today and for giving us your ears. We really appreciate your time and love having you here on the program. And you're in for a treat right now. We have Curtis Houck, managing editor of Newsbusters. Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
Stacey.
So let's talk about Samantha Bee's advertisers. It's been a couple of weeks. The furor over her comments about Ivanka Trump have died down, and most people consider it to be, it's over. She survived. She kept her job. And most people on the left feel like that's totally fair, even though it's the biggest double standard ever, which is saying a lot considering the double standards we're currently enduring. But it turns out the unreported story is that she lost a bunch of advertisers after the initial statement that she made, and they haven't come back.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's walk through this here. So the episode in which she used the word ugly phrase to describe Ivanka Trump, there were, not counting Turner-owned promos for shows also on TBS or TNT, there were 19 spots, okay? Then last week, when she was supposed to offer an apology, but you can kind of think about whether it was an actual apology or not. I'd say no, but, to each their own. There were only 6, non-in-house advertisements. But this week, and obviously the show was taped beforehand, so the advertisers don't exactly know what she's going to say. So we thought maybe that, she would be put in timeout or something, and they would be coming back. We were really prepared for that here in the newsroom last night. But then once the show happened and they started going to commercial break, it was the same number, only 6 non-in-house advertisements last night. And it was simply stunning to see that, maybe she's not put just in like a 1-week timeout thing. And so it's definitely something to monitor. But again, it's not something that is getting a lot of attention today between the IG report and even before the IG report came out, like this morning. That was not really a story, but it was a huge story for us, and it's been a huge story for our readers because we really think there's something there.
So let's talk about this a little bit. I feel like I know a little bit, maybe just enough to be dangerously uninformed about how television advertising works, where it intersects with whether or not a show survives. I know for Laura Ingraham, the furor around her really benign comment to that awful little gun control activist who happens to have at the time been 17 years old, advertisers dive bombed off of the show, and there was this big discussion online that she could lose the program because without the advertisers, what's the point? But the viewers didn't go down. So she didn't lose audience. She lost advertisers. So advertisers can be replaced with others who want access to those millions of eyeballs. But the conversation was she lose the show.
They went up. Her ratings went up.
They did. And they remain up. So she actually turned lemons into lemonade. But what happens with Samantha Bee? I think it's different because TBS is it's an entertainment channel as opposed to news. And Samantha Bee's program is pre-recorded. Laura Ingraham's is live every night. I mean, there's a lot of similarity, but there's a lot of difference. How does it work when you have 19 slots and now you have 6? The show is no longer as profitable as it was if this remains the status quo.
Exactly. That is such an excellent point. And the other thing to think about is with a news show like Laura Ingraham's, if there's breaking news or something happens or there's a terror attack or someone dies or, whatever else, or an election night, there's no commercials. You notice that this afternoon with the IG report for large stretches. The 3 cable networks, there were no commercials. It was all talking about the IG report's findings because there was breaking news. There was a huge story that happened, and so cable news kind of has that leeway to be able to do that because there's that understanding, I think, with advertisers and the executives that things may happen. Bad things or most cases will happen. Whereas with a tape show like this that is on cable, it is much more kind of built in where you're going to get commercial breaks, even with sporting events, because they know that, in baseball there's going to be a break between the innings. So there's going to be advertisements. Football, there's halftime, or people are going to get hurt, so there's going to be injury timeouts. Whereas comedy shows like this, there's only so much space that there is there, and it's like a scripted television show that episodes are only, so much time. So therefore, they have to fill in with advertising spots. So that's why it's a little bit more significant, if you think about it, for Samantha Bee that she's not having advertisers than a Laura Ingraham or a Bill O'Reilly who did lose his show. And so I think that's what's really important. And again, to keep in mind that, it's shown that this is beyond a 1-week timeout, or temporary reprieve here. So if this goes on for a third and fourth week, you really do start to wonder how profitable is this, because Samantha Bee was reeled in from Comedy Central and she received a lot of money for this. And her husband has a scripted show. I forget what it's called. I think it's called The Detour. But so they are tied up into this network, and Turner really has kind of latched its, kind of truck to that, to Samantha Bee. And so, again, that is a certain point. You wonder how much can they take before it really starts to hurt.
So, Curtis, if I'm understanding you correctly, because you've made a very, very important distinction between news programming and how they manage their because these are relationships with these advertisers, and they have an understanding for news. You've explained that so well. So, thank you, because I hadn't even thought about that. I noticed it, but it's not like it's at the front of your mind when you're just watching. You're like, oh, we've been an hour with no commercials, but somebody gets married, someone dies, it's something huge. Or there's a terror attack. Well, they'll go hours really with just nonstop wall-to-wall coverage. So when we talk about the taking a break, and this is obviously speculation on our part, but I do think we have some historical basis with which to speculate this way. When we talk about a brand, you mentioned that they lured her over from another network, that they've hitched their wagon to her because she's very marketable, attractive, younger. She has a very brazen, brash style of comedy that seems to have really intersected with a younger demographic that includes women, which is why she had 19 advertisers. But if the comment that she made is so repugnant to advertisers that they remain away, then the truck doesn't have wheels anymore. It can't move. There's no need to be hitched to it. So could she eventually end up losing the show if this reticence by advertisers to take her on persists?
I don't see any other way that doesn't happen if this continues. TBS has said that they stand behind Samantha Bee, and number of kind of pundits, journalists, and comedians have reiterated their thing that they're standing behind her. But I think, again, you get to the bottom line here about money, and a show that they put a lot of marketing into, and they really put a risk on, a female hosting albeit a one night a week, but nonetheless a late night comedy show, and it continues to lose money, not so much even in the ratings, but regardless of ratings. But in terms of advertisers, again, that really starts to add up here, and that means more time that they have to fill in with promos for, Snoop Dogg's show or something else. And, they've relied a lot on movies here, and movies, the previews for those really only go through, maybe the first couple of weeks after they've come out, before you have to find something else. And so that we saw that last night with a couple of the movies being, at least two of them being her spots. Two, yes, of the six. So I definitely think they can stand behind her, and I genuinely believe that. And that they want her to continue. But in terms of whether the advertisers come back, that's really not in their, that's out of their hands. If a business doesn't want to advertise on their show, like State Farm and Jim Beam that were there the week that the word was said, and they have not been on since, then TBS Turner can't force them to do that. So then they're left in a place of scrambling to try and find other advertisers. But if people say no, they say no. You can't force someone to advertise on a show.
Well, so, and they might have the same concern that there becomes this thing that has been the left has been very successful in realizing that once they attach a negative label to someone and some advertisers leave, the normal thing would be to say, yeah, those advertisers left, but we can get these advertisers over here who've been waiting for an opportunity to advertise. But if you're successful in attaching that stigma to the show, then advertisers who might have previously jumped at coming on are now also hesitant to be a part of it because they don't want their brand attached to the whatever the controversy was. So I guess who is it? I know it was State Farm. There were a few of them that were kind of prominent that I heard, but I only heard about 6 leaving. So this new number you're presenting is much higher than I was, was reported in the news that I saw.
Well, a number of them just have not said anything. They have not advertised from the show. So I'll run through a couple of the advertisers that ran on the night of when the C word was said, but they did not, that they haven't said anything, and they just have not been back on. Orkin, Pest Control, Taco Bell, Apple, Verizon, Haagen-Dazs, Jim Beam, Windows, Febreze, Discover, Snickers, State Farm and Auto Traders publicly said that they would not advertise on the show. Last week we had PlayStation, Cascade, Jurassic World, a couple of TV shows on other non-Turner networks. And then last night we just had PlayStation, the first Purge, TripAdvisor, Consumer Cellular, another movie called Tag, and Wendy's. And that'll be, I guess something that people will notice. People are really noticing our count of these advertisers. And mainstream outlets have tried to kind of ask us how we got our methodology. And it's funny. And we're like, we just watched the show. You write down the advertisers. There's really nothing else to it. There's no way to undermine our, situation here because we're just simply reporting what we're seeing, come across the television here. We say we're watching it on DirecTV, so it is what it is. And, again, this is a situation that I think bears watching. And I just think it's ironic because this is something that, has happened on Fox News and has been perpetuated by left-wing groups for a long time. And now that, first we had Joy Behar, but Joy Behar kept her job and she apologized, and we kind of move on from there. We showed where we're different than the left. We don't continue to hound them. But on this, where she didn't really offer a sincere apology, it's continuing, and we're going to see what happens because this is kind of uncharted territory. But for the left, I think it's a lesson for them that, things can kind of swing the other way too. Irony has a way of doing that. So again, we'll see what happens in the weeks to come to get a real definitive conclusion.
Hey, I can't wait to hear what you guys find. My thing with it is, I think there's a disgust level for what Samantha Bee said that doesn't register publicly. For me, in my little back channel of people that I know, it was an immediate, cutting off. It was one of those things where if they didn't know who she was, and they were like, well, I'm glad I've never watched her show. I never will. I'll never associate with anything. Like if she's in a movie, I won't watch it. There's just no way I'm going to have anything to do with her because of what she said. For people who knew who she was and thought maybe her comedy was no good or thought it was biting comedy that even though they don't agree with it, it was still witty, there was still the shutdown. It was like you hear what she said, and then I don't know anybody who isn't a hardcore leftist, like an activist, who would say it wasn't that offensive to me or that word doesn't bother me. I only heard that from hardcore activists. Everyone else was pretty equal in saying, that's unacceptable. I will never frequent anything she has to do with again. And if that's just, obviously anecdotal, but if you see that happening with regular people, you have to think that people who work in advertising shops who choose which ads they're going to buy and what we're going to put this amount of money here and there would have had the same kind of visceral reaction as women, because a lot of women work in advertising. So it's
exactly.
It's interesting.
Exactly. We've seen the rise of corporate liberalism with businesses really take up liberal politics, liberal causes, partner with left-wing groups, especially for gay marriage, and transsexuals, and all that other kind of thing. But it's been interesting to see that people draw the line on the most repugnant word that you could possibly use to describe a woman, and I think it's kind of like someone talking about the Holocaust or something like that. That is just stop. You just draw the line. Yeah. And I think that's really important. I think in this day and age to see that, albeit you have to get to a really high level of disgust to get there, that there is still a line. That there is still a line of what's acceptable and what's not, not acceptable, and what's decent and what's not. And it's very clearly that Samantha Bee crossed the line into a level of indecency that we, really haven't seen, in comedy in some, or just anywhere in some time in our body politic that there's no place for that. And I think that's, it's good to see, I think. Whether that continues is another question, but at least in this situation, it's been nice to see that people of all political structure, people that aren't interested in the news, see that and be like, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not going to watch that show.
You know what, Curtis? To see that the recipient was someone who is routinely held up for ridicule and is normally, it's fine to attack her, that she was the one that Samantha Bee decided to hit with this, and it's actually biting her back. It is really a fascinating story, which I will be keeping up with at Newsbusters. And I thank you so much for your time today.
No problem, Stacey. Always a great time.
All right. Thanks, Curtis. Well, that's the show. God bless. Have a fantastic evening tonight. I'll be back with you tomorrow with more Stacey on the Right.